Okay, so we got a recording going. Well, good morning, everybody. It's good to have you after the holidays. I know you're excited to get back to work and get everything moving again for a brand new year. And so today we're going to be talking about harnessing continuous improvement, unveiling insights from lessons learned and retrospectives. And so that's our title today. And let me tell you a little bit about why this is something that I wanted to talk about. One of the challenges that we get into in project management, and you're starting to see a bigger driver for this, is this idea of continuous improvement. How can we learn to improve, and how can we get better over time? And so you have this from a lot of different types of things that we do. For an example, all in the quality area, whether you're in quality manufacturing or producing products or whatever the case may be, we've all spent some time thinking about the continuous improvement. And that has been a theme that has gone around for a long time. However, in project management, we've started talking about it, but a lot of times we don't really flesh that out to be able to get the benefit of some of the things that we do, some of the processes that we do, such as lessons learned and retrospectives. We don't really flesh some of those out to be able to then go ahead and come up with a lessons learned that is beneficial enough for us to have continuous improvement. So today I'm going to talk about it a little bit. It feels a little bit disjointed possibly when we talk about it, because we're going to be talking about lessons learned and retrospectives, which are two of the main tools that you're going to have to come up with your continuous improvement plan. Because what you do in a retrospective or what you do in a closeout or in a lessons learned it's going to surface these things that you want to repeat, and it's also going to surface these things that you don't that you don't want to repeat. And we've all been there where you think, man, I know one thing, I don't want to do that again, whatever that is. And so we've all had that happen. We've all had that happen before. And so we're going to be able to do that. So let's go ahead and get our slide up so you can see it. All right. So we're going to be talking about harnessing continuous improvement, unveiling insights from lessons learned and retrospectives. And so let me get this to where everything's just a little off this morning. So let me move some of this stuff around so I can see you and so I can see it. Very good. Here we go. So it didn't pop up on the screens that I thought it was going to. So let me get this up for you. All right, so you should start seeing it for sure here. Okay, so today as we talk about continuous improvement and looking at lessons learned and retrospectives in particular, we're wanting to be able to look at how can we turn those particular tools that we use in our projects into something that's going to benefit us. So when we're talking about continuous improvement, I wanted to start with something that I thought was really interesting. We do a lot of government work with the state of Kansas. We do some for Missouri, and we've do it for FAA and other type of organizations. But I found this just literally early this morning when I was looking back through my notes on things. And this is from Minnesota, the state of Minnesota. Minnesota's government's continuous improvement initiative highlights their extensive training of over 8,500 government employees in continuous improvement, principals and assistants in over 500 events and projects. Now, I wanted to start with that because I don't know anything. I don't have a connection to Minnesota. I don't know anything about this. But I think that just because that has been publicized and because that happens to be on their continuous improvement website, this is a great thing to see happening with our tax dollars. If I was in Minnesota and a citizen of that state, I would love this, because this makes, at least gives the appearance that we're trying to be efficient with our money. I want you to see this because this is really the jump ahead of what we're trying to do in our organizations. To be able to have a continuous improvement to where it's not something that we feel like we're battling per project, if that makes any sense to anybody else, but it's something to where this is something that we're going to live every day. It's a lifestyle. And so continuous improvement, we're always looking at how to be better as a company, as an organization, in our processes, in our training and education of our people. All of those types of things are part of continuous improvement. And sometimes, maybe your organization's different, but many people will verbalize that they feel like they're fighting. They don't do a lessons learned because of time. They don't do retrospectives or don't give them enough time. They rush their stakeholders. They rush those type of meetings to where they can evaluate what they did and make projections on what they could do better. That's the reason why we're kind of here where we are. So as we look at continuous improvement, let's start off with one of the tools that makes the difference on doing continuous improvement and being able to get the right stuff, and that's going to be your lessons learned. Now, I'm not going to ask you how many of you do a lessons learned, and once again, a lot of times a lessons learned is a very brief meeting, and I get it. There are times that fits, but it's a meeting in plan-driven projects specifically for traditional projects for the purpose of discovery. We're discovering what we did right. We're discovering what we did wrong. The team and the project manager will meet and they talk about the different phases of the project or the different parts of the project, and they look at success and they look at failure. Now, as you look at each of these, once again, this is not a blame game. Let me set the right tone here. This isn't to say, oh, things would have been good if it wasn't for stinking Mathis. Mathis screwed it all up. That's not the goal of this, or these meetings aren't going to go anywhere. The goal of this is just to look at the data, to look at the information and say, okay, we did awesome over here. Over here, we had some hiccups, and over here, we really bumbled it up. What can we do different? So you're not pointing a finger at anybody. You're not blaming anybody. You're trying to look at what could we have done better and different to produce this. And so the purpose is really to improve continuously, improve your skills, your people's skills as they look at these various things. Now, for those of you who are not as familiar on Agile, and many of you I know are, we do something very similar called a retrospective. Now, your retrospective for Agile is at the end of the project, obviously, just like a lessons learned, but your retrospective can also be at the end of each sprint or iteration. And so if we do a 3-week sprint or iteration, we can do a retrospective so that the team can learn from that previous retrospective and look at what can we produce that's going to continue to produce the productivity and the good stuff for us, and what do we want to get rid of because it's not being very effective for us. And so it's called a retrospective. And so it's a meeting after the sprint or the project for discovery, and it focuses on continuous improvement as well. How can we be better? What do we need to know? Do our people even know the right stuff? And a lot of times this is where we will discover some of our training gaps in some of these. Both of these tools, and let's call them tools for this purpose, even though they're very much anchored into our projects, both of these tools really produce what the content that you need for that continuous improvement. So it changes good work to great work. It fixes the problem or the impediments once. It helps the team evolve to both better processes, increase knowledge, and focuses on solving real problems with for future projects. And that last one there is so important because this is what comes up so many times in training. And let me just give you a chance to think about this. How many times do we jump over the lessons learned or retrospective and we find ourselves putting out the same fire in the very next project? And so we have the same hiccups over and over again. And we think, man, this is just crazy. Crazy people are involved in this because we're going from one project and having that hiccup, and we're going to the very next project and having the same hiccups. And so that's what you're trying to get away from. Not that you're never going to have bumps in the road. Of course we are. It's project management. There's bumps there. But what you're talking about here is how can we solidify and get rid of some of those things that are just happening because of lack of planning or lack of education or whatever it is. So let's talk first off and go from the aspect of a sprint retrospective. So we know it's a meeting at the end of the sprint. It's used for debrief. It's used for learning, just like the lessons learned is. And so your team and everyone is going to look at all the different things. And what are you looking at? Same thing that you do it with the lessons learned. What went well? What needs help? What are the challenges before going to the next sprint? Or what was the challenges in the project? So it doesn't have to be brain surgery here. We're just trying to come up with something to where we are looking at how can we make this a little bit better? What was clumsy for us? Now, many of you who are running sprints, you're not running a pure Agile or a pure Scrum type atmosphere. You're running it probably in a hybrid type situation. And so you're going to have more things to have to talk about than somebody who's in a pure Scrum or Agile situation, because the environment in a pure Scrum and Agile situation is probably much more conducive for this. But if you're running that hybrid type situation, and I know many of you are, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because you're trying to do Agile or Scrum in an atmosphere of traditional, and you find yourself bumping into certain things. We got to have this report, which you normally would not have. And so who's going to do the report? And we've got to get it to this person, and we've got to have this sign off, and we've got to have this meeting, and we've got to convert our numbers and metrics over to this. You find all those things happening when you're trying to do the hybrid. And so this is where this would benefit you even more in some of those situations. And so, in other words, you're looking at self-assessment. What do I need to learn? What do our people need to learn? You're looking at problem analysis. How did we handle the problem? How did we make the decision? Did we make the decision in the right way? And then once again, process improvements. What do we need to do with these processes that are maybe a little bit outdated? Not bad people, not bad organizations, but these processes are maybe a little bit more outdated than what we thought. So let's look at a team retrospective. Retrospectives can even go into the team. So let's look at it from this aspect. So it's a meeting of at the end of a milestone or a release to discuss team performance, the processes, or the outcomes. Now, looking at this and writing this for this, you're the first one seeing this particular piece. I thought it was really good to consider this because we can really focus and do a deep dive into the performance of our people and even the processes that they're having hiccups with right now. Many of you deal with this and we kind of put Band-Aids on it as we go across, and that's not what you're trying to do. Okay, so we've got our same people, so you're looking at what processes are working well. And once again, those of you in hybrid are already having to do this, and this is going to make a lot of sense to you. What is actual performance compared to what is actual performance compared to expected performance? So do we have a gap? Do we have a gap between what we thought we were going to do and what we're actually doing? And you know what? Most of us know that in project management, nothing runs smooth, and so there normally is a little bit of a gap. We think we're going to be able to get this thing up and going super quick, and we've got certain key people that are stuck on another project and we can't get them over there. And so you'll find yourself talking about some of these, but this could be a team retrospective. And so you come back with self-adjustments, strategic adjustments, project adjustments. What do we need in some of these? And so you and your team can do this even without it being the entire project or even the entire sprint. Just you and your team can look at it even from the aspect of a release or from a milestone. Let me give you another idea. Go back to the project retrospective we were talking about. So it's a meeting at the end of the project to evaluate the successful achievement areas and for continuous improvement. So your project retrospective and your sprint retrospective is very similar. Why? Because you're asking the same three questions with the same group of people, but you're looking at a couple of things just a little bit different. Instead of looking at one sprint, 1 3-week sprint, you're looking at the totality of the project. All of these retrospectives for each sprint should have built on some of this for you to have some documentation. And so in that last retrospective, you're talking about a combination of all of these different sprints and what is surfaced. And so you examine the timeliness of the sprints. Were we able to do what we thought we were going to do? Discuss key deliverables, handoffs, talk over strategies for any obstacles that you had. Well, how were our demos? How did the customer receive the demos? Did the customer participate or not participate? All the stuff that just drives us nuts all the time. We get a chance to talk about how can we engage the people differently? How can we do it differently? So in that project retrospective, you're going to talk about both positive and negatives and continuous improvement areas. And that's one of the reasons why all of these are tools that drive us to that continuous improvement. So I say that to say, if we're not doing a lessons learned and we're not doing a retrospective, those are two of your best tools to be able to pick up what you're looking for to be able to say, okay, these are some continuous improvement initiatives that we can work with. And it might be beyond your power and beyond your budget. I get it, but this would at least be a recommendation to management for them to be able to see this. Okay, so let's look at some views of the lessons learned in the retrospective. Here's some things that help you. You're looking at reusable skills. You want to work smarter. Our workforce seems to be tighter in most of our organizations. Many of you that we've been with, it feels like you're working with a skeleton crew because you've got just enough people to run everything, and management maybe is not letting new people come in or additional people come back to work. And so if you're running on a skeleton crew, but you're working on all these projects that are coming down the pipeline. So you're wanting to be able to pass those skills and get everybody up to where they have skill sets that are growing in all these areas. So you're going to have increased knowledge, adjusting processes, shifting culture, and then sometimes people do nothing. So you're wanting to be able to take these first 4 here and allow that to benefit your project. Why? That's going to bring something positive, and your tool is lessons learned and retrospectives that's going to help you. But many people will do the last one, do nothing. Why? It's easy. It's easy. We can close our eyes to it, gripe about the project, hope for the best in the other projects, but nothing changes. And we've all lived through through those type of challenges before. So reusable skills, what are we talking about? Skill development comes from training various team members, but skills come from the lessons learned in the retrospective. Even if I never trained my people, they would pick up skills just from what we're talking about in the lessons learned and in the retrospective, because they're learning how to do it differently. They didn't like what happened. None of us do, with the pressure and all the unknowns. None of us like that, but they're still learning. They're picking up experience because we've talked about it. And so these reusable skills go from discovery to where now this becomes a practice to where they understand how to be able to solve and resolve that problem faster. Increased knowledge that we're talking about from lessons learned and retrospective. So you're expanding their knowledge base. Why? Because they're being exposed to something in a safe environment with other workers who maybe have more exposure to them. You see this in the medical field all the time when you see doctors who will do an operation, and of course they have all their medical students around them, and then eventually they are able to start doing pieces of that surgery, and then eventually they're doing the entire surgery. And so what are they doing? They are passing that knowledge on in baby steps. And that's really what you're doing in the project. So knowledge requires more than listing it in a lessons learned register. It's talking about exactly what the strategy should be to be able to deal with that and to be able to make that better. So it requires following the steps, gaining support from management. So it's not just a document. That's not a continuous improvement, putting it in a document. It's actually talking to management about that hiccup and making recommendations on how to change it. Adjusting the processes from lessons learned and retrospectives. This is one of the biggest challenges that all of us have had. Those of you who've been doing traditional projects forever, like I have, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You get in there, you see where there's hiccups with some of the processes, but the processes are treated like the Holy Grail, and nobody allows you to be able to do that. So that becomes a little bit of a challenge. But process alignment is something that we have to look at in every organization. And it doesn't mean that the people who put the processes together in the past, it's bad. It means we've got new processes. We've got new steps that we have to follow. And the thing is, that's part of that innovation. And if you don't think that we've got it now, you give it 7 months as more artificial intelligence comes into the workforce. We're going to have to look at every aspect of our process to see where can artificial intelligence help us and where do we not need it. And so we're going to be looking at these from that aspect as well. So a lessons learned is going to help you to be able to fix the entire problem. Plus, you're going to have new technology coming in. Let me just chase a rabbit for a second. I saw on the this past week, we were coming back from New Orleans, got stuck in Arkansas with snow and ice, and stayed in Hardy, Arkansas. And Hardy's not a very big place, and no restaurants that Sunday night, and McDonald's was the only thing open the next couple of days. And so, so we ate everything in McDonald's menu pretty much. So anyway, but the thing that was interesting, I thought, was if you noticed and you watched the football games for the playoffs, on one of the channels, they were talking about using artificial intelligence to help calculate some of the statistics for the players and to make recommendations to the coaches on which players would be the better players. And I thought, what a fascinating piece of information that they're giving to the public and talking about them being innovative, that they're using artificial intelligence to calculate all the data from the NFL for their players. And so if you're looking at something like that is happening with NFL and how players perform, why would we think that this is not going to influence us in how our team performs? Who's the best team for this particular project? It's a logical step right there. And I don't think I'm grabbing too much. I think it's a very logical step. Now, we can always change and do something different because of other reasons. But my point is that the processing, the analysis of that data is very much going to be something that AI will probably do. And for those of you who are interested in some of this, we'll be advertising. I've got a 2-day AI program I'm just about finished writing. We will be advertising it as a public seminar earlier, not long. And plus, we'll be doing an AI webinar. So you'll be hearing more about that. I don't know what the dates are. We book everything a year out, but you'll be hearing more about that. So in Agile, the process of setting up the project, running the meetings, conducting demos, retrospectives, they all help us get greater efficiency and help us get feedback and do stuff faster. That's what you're trying to do. So this other piece here is shifting culture. This is a challenge because you might not have the authority to shift culture or the power or the position. This is why management has to be in on this with you is because you're going to need management to be able, with their power, to have buy-in into this. So you're not trying to make crazy recommendations, but you are trying to make strategic recommendations for efficiency. Efficiency makes sense to management. Management wants their organization to make money, to be able to have good benefits, good efficiency, bring value. All of that's going to be there, okay? So shifting the culture, though, is a project by itself, because you're shifting the way we've done something to doing something totally different. So it means thinking different. And so that's one of the reasons why when you talk about shifting culture, which is going to be processes and how we do things, this is going to take some innovative people and people of power to be able to do this. Do nothing. It's very easy to do. And maybe you've been at an organization that says, well, we'll just wait and see. And I get it. People don't want to spend money or waste money. It doesn't present an innovative kind of organization a lot of times. So it's hard to believe that after hearing and documenting recommendations from lessons learned retrospectives, the decision is to do nothing, but it happens every day. So it's not time for you to be a grump with your organization because they didn't take your recommendation. You give the recommendation, and then management can take it and do with. The thing is that we're going to have to do something eventually, or we're going to be left behind. And that's what you're going to see with many organizations. One of the examples that I heard years and years ago that I thought was interesting is that, do you know that one of the biggest companies way back in the Civil War days was a bucket company? And they get the guy who was speaking gave all the details about this bucket company. I mean, it was the most profitable type of company. And he said, you know what? He said they went out of business. You know why? Nobody needed a bucket after we got running water. We don't really have buckets. We don't need the bucket. We're not carrying water everywhere. And it was just a great example of how innovation changes what's in need. And so buckets were needed back there all the way up to the Civil War. But the moment we got into the 1900s and started getting running water, you started realizing that I don't need a bucket. I've got water at the tap. Maybe that wasn't a good illustration, but it was one that came to my mind. It made sense to me. Maybe it doesn't make sense to you. So efficiency is my point. Now, I thought this was an excellent graphic here. And so this was put out by Larson and Derby. And so this is called an Agile retrospective. In 2006, they put this out. They were one of the companies that was writing about and researching Agile all the way back to 2006. So notice how they show this. And I like it because this is an iteration, because you're constantly moving and you're constantly making things better. And so notice that as they're building the product and delivering the product, setting the stage, gathering the data, generating the insights, deciding what to do, closing the retrospective, incorporating experiments and improvements. Notice that piece right there. That's your continuous improvement component. And then once again, after they've incorporated experiments and improvements, now they're building the product better with higher efficiency, maybe even faster than what they were doing before. The purpose of continuous improvement. We know it's to focus on removing waste. And of course, those of you who are in Six Sigma or Lean Six Sigma, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're trying to remove waste. Waste is not just to save $1, even though that's obviously waste. Waste is, can I save a step? Can I save a movement? Can I save time? All of those are pieces that you're looking at in being able to save waste. Can I be more productive than I've ever been? So when lessons learned and retrospectives are conducted, documented, and used to change current trends to something better in the future, it benefits the business, the project, and the way the organization runs. And so what that really means is that we have gotten rid of waste. We run better. And so that means that we're going to have less waste, whatever that waste might be. Now, the purpose for continuous improvement, Dewar and Duchette wrote this in 2019, and I thought it was really good. They said continuous improvement creates a competitive edge for those organizations that consistently do it. So how can I get better? That means I'm going to try to stay competitive. It doesn't take long for any of us to kind of be outdated. And you know what? It's hitting project management and project management processes the exact same way. The longer that we go along and don't make changes to things, we think, well, we've got a great process. You do today, but that great process might not be there tomorrow. And so you find yourself, why does PMI constantly come out every so many years with new version of PMBOK, Project Management Body of Knowledge? knowledge. It's because they're wanting to update the processes to fit the culture of the organizations today. And so that process has changed. Do you remember PMBOK 2? If any of you have been with PMI for that long, you know what I'm talking about. It wasn't very big. It was, I don't know, I haven't looked at it in forever, but I think it's 70 or 80 pages. If you looked at PMBOK 6, it was like 780 pages. So you're talking about a huge difference. Now, PMBOK 7 is much smaller. It's about half that size because they've changed how and what they're doing with PMBOK, because they're looking at using it more as a handbook. But my point in saying that is that they're trying to innovate. So they look at improvements from a couple of different things. One is innovation. How do they do what they do? Can we learn from someone else? You look at Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A is one of the most innovative companies. What are other people doing? They're looking at Chick-fil-A and they're trying to look at those processes and bring them into today's setting. You see coffee shops that there are several coffee shops that are using the Chick-fil-A model and selling coffee just like Chick-fil-A is using to sell chicken. And so that innovation, they're trying to learn from someone else, engaging the employees and sharing knowledge, exploring better ways. So it's not just on-the-job training. It's how can I develop that employee to where they've got better, they understand more. Now, many of you go back to the PDCA, goes all the way back to Deming and how he used PDCA, or Plan, Do, Check, Act. Schuhart is actually who came up with this. And so we go back to this all the way back to the 60s when you saw some of these, but some of these are not out of style. They've just got a little different twist to it because we've got such technology that we're using it with to be able to do this. But this allows you to look at plan, do, did it make any difference, the check part, and then act. What's our action on this? And so we make another adjustment if we need to. And so you're constantly going through that cycle. Those of you on Lean Six Sigma, you've lived this on your quality side. But the point is that so many times we've kind of played project management to where it's almost hands off in these things. But this will benefit us in so many ways. Many of you have heard the word Kaizen. You've been exposed to it if you did your PMP. It's a Japanese term for continuous improvement. Kaizen believes everyone is involved in continuous improvement. No one should be left out of the discussion. Why? Because they believe anybody who is connected with that project at all has a view about that project that could be beneficial. Think about how many times we leave people out. We don't want to talk to anybody. Well, don't bring the operators in. We don't want to talk to them, and don't bring these people in. We have a tendency to exclude people. And so Japanese companies do not look at Kaizen as a program. They look at it as a way of life. This is how we're going to do things. And so it's ingrained in every aspect of learning, achievement, and life. There's some benefits here that would help us. And that is that letting people be part of it and talk about that. And you think, oh, well, we've got so many people sitting around a table, attending a meeting. Yes, our meetings have to be efficient. Our meetings have to be obviously run in a very effective way to be able to talk and meet and move on. But we lose something sometimes when we cut some of the people out. And so you're wanting the right people, obviously, but we lose something. Now, Kaizen in 1986, this was some of the things under the Kaizen umbrella: customer orientation, total quality, suggestion systems, automation, discipline, new product development, Kanban, quality improvement, zero defects, cooperative labor, productivity improvements. You've heard all of those in a variety of different programs, not just through Kaizen, but Lean Six Sigma, all of these will, zero defects, you'll pick up on these on almost any type of quality book. Why? Because continuous improvement is one of the greatest quality lifestyles that we can have as an organization. Now, let's go back to that process improvement piece. So you've got established processes. We know that those are sometimes, like the Holy Grail, aren't they? We can't touch them. They've been there 40 years and that's the way they are. But then what you're looking at here is new or change processes. Is there a way to get rid of waste? Is there a way to do this in a better way? And then of course, what's solidifying that is that process improvement piece, because you're pulling that together to be able to make good changes, not just changes. Sometimes people think, well, we're just going to change everything. Well, you want to make calculated changes, good changes for what you're trying to do. And so it needs to support, that process improvement has to support your best practices within your organization, as well as new innovation. Now let's go do a deep dive here real quick, okay? So you've got best practices. You say, well, we really don't. Really, you do, though. You've got processes, and those processes, even if you don't have it written down, have become the best practices. It's the steps you're going to go through to do your project, or it's the steps you're going to go through to get your project funded or to hand off to the customer. And so what you're trying to do is make those best practices better and make that a living document. That's really what you're trying to do. However, you've got innovation over here that's making all of these impacts to it. So here's the thing about your innovation, okay? Innovation's kind of been hit and miss over the years in project management, because we would buy software packages, and some of that innovation would help us and some of that innovation we didn't use. I mean, we don't use every tool in every software package. I get it. However, as we move into more of the AI world, that innovation is going to be broader and is going to be looked at deeper than ever before, because you're looking at not only having a tool over here that you're using, but you're looking at something that's going to be flagging things and making recommendations to you. And so for you to make decisions, those best practices are going to have to be updated, current, and that living document we're talking about. So these are connected to 4 categories of processes to view. We've always started the strategic goals. And so any of you who've been in my classes, we've talked about this, and you maybe have seen this very thing here, okay? Strategic goal. What is it that the organization wants to do strategically? That should drive everything. And of course, it's going to be bringing some type of value, benefits, and return on investment. And then you notice that portfolio goals. That's where the money is going to be contained. Money's going to be put in all the portfolios to drive those initiatives, which are also supporting the strategic plan. And then it's dropping down, and we showed you the program goals. And so that's going to be putting money down there, which is driving the portfolio goals, which is driving the strategic. And then here we are down here at the bottom with the projects, the project goals. And those goals, that's lineage, that's alignment. And so you should have every project we're running should be able to connect to some type of strategic initiative. And so that's one of the reasons why you're wanting to make sure your processes are streamlined and that they are doing as well as possible, but you're also bringing value to that organization. So you're looking at the organizational, you're looking at the monetary, the program, and you're looking at the project. And even though we might work at the project level, don't kid yourself, those strategic goals is what management's running. And if you're making recommendations that's going to help them reach those strategic goals faster and more efficient, they're going to love what you're saying. So don't blow it off that, well, I'm just a little project manager down here. Let me tell you something. They'll listen to you as you make those recommendations if it makes sense to them that it's going to change those. Now, we also look at phases for changing culture. We talked about changing culture a little bit. And so the basis of process improvement I thought was really good by these authors, Boitros and Cardella, and they said build momentum, change mindsets, and then continuously improve. I love it when you get into an organization and their idea is to continuously improve. You know, how can I be better? How can I change myself to be better? How can I change my people to be better? If you've worked for somebody like that, you know what I'm talking about. They are a wealth of information and they are a wealth of help to their people. So as you start transitioning them, here's some things to help you a little bit maybe. So building momentum. This is sometimes one of the hardest things is to get something going. So help all parties identify with the need for change in the process, keep everyone moving forward. Even if it's baby steps, you're still moving forward. So you're talking about the need for change and getting people and stakeholders on board for this. And then you're changing the mindset. And so many don't like change, and you already know this. You know that people will drag their feet. They don't want to change. They've been doing this 20 years. I don't think there's a need for me to change. I'm going to do it that way until I leave. We all have people around us, but mindsets can and will change if it makes sense to the culture and if they have some kind of personal benefit from this. So if this is going to make their job easier, you'll see people jump on board a lot faster than if this is just 5 more pieces of paper I'm having to fill out. And so if I'm just filling out additional documentation, that's stupid to me because I haven't needed it before. Why am I having to do it now? But if what we're doing makes sense to that, you're going to see people support it and then continuously improve. Whatever you're doing right now, guess what? You're going to adjust it and tweak it to be able to get this thing going in full force here. And so you're improving the competencies, the processes, the metrics, all those things could and might be part of that. So creating a process improvement culture. So what is the culture? It's the internal personality of the company. And some of you love your internal companies, and some of you maybe not so much. But that internal personality, you know, and think of the organization. Many of you work for a company, you say, man, I love working here. This is awesome. And then many of you, maybe when you work for someone, you think, work at that organization, you think, wow, I can't see myself being here 20 years. You know, you just don't like that culture. You don't like that personality. So you're wanting that personality. It's how people act, how they respond, what they joke about. And so you're wanting that personality to be something that's going to be conducive. And so create a process improvement culture, frees the employees to point out any gap in a process, but they don't feel like they're going to get their hands slapped or chewed out because they brought something up. And also it doesn't fight anyone for bringing it up suggestions or putting anyone down for bringing it up. You're not looked at as Ned the negaholic for doing any of these things. So this process improvement culture, I thought this was really good. This goes back to the basis. So you identify, discuss, focus, and then solve. And so as you're looking at this, you're looking to see how can we benefit that organization. As you solve it, then you're looking at some kind of metric of time, or you're looking at money. It could be just performance. It could just be ease, but you've got to look at some kind of metric to be able to show that we have gotten some value out of making that particular adjustment and change. So continually identify problems before they grow into major issues. That's going to be the identify. Discuss problems openly. Look at problems without judgment. On the focus side, you look at large and small problems. Small problems matter also. And a lot of times we've tried to attack the big one, but a lot of times the big one is a combination of some of the small ones that have added up, aren't they? And so sometimes you're having to do both. You're having to work on the large one, but you're breaking it into smaller parts. And then on the solving part, solve real problems. Try to get to the root cause of it. And that's what you're trying to do. If this thing's still coming back, then that problem maybe has not really been solved, because once again, a root cause, and once you get to the root cause, that problem should not be coming up over and over again. Sometimes we slap a Band-Aid on it and keep going. So as we talk about conducting a retrospective for continuous improvement, so begin quickly as part of the closing session of the meeting or as soon after it. Conduct an agenda review. Itemize the goals, the objectives that were achieved in the meeting, evaluate meeting flow of participation, discuss the balance of how teams make decisions, review action items and assignment processes for challenges, create suggestions for improvement. And so I just wanted to give you several things that come up a lot of times when we're talking about these things, but it allows you to be able to do this. So we could do a retrospective on how we run meetings. Now, most meetings, I will tell you, in the last 3 years have gotten better. COVID has actually made us get better in running meetings. Maybe that's not your meetings that you attend, but most of the time, a lot of our meetings are really being run much more effective virtually and with an agenda than they ever were face-to-face. And so that's been a positive. But let's say you're attending those meetings and it's like, poke me in the eye. This thing is just dragging out. Then that would be one of those pieces that you'd talk about, okay, let's see if we can't run our meetings better. Can we have an agenda? Can we have a timer? Can we have people put in to where they're ready to go and they're not just called on and surprised that they're being asked to be part of this? So how do you conduct the lessons learned? Let me just show you a little graphic here. So you've got your finishing the project or the phase. And so you meet the requirements. And so we gave you some of the questions that might be talked about. You probably have better questions. And so I understand that. So what went well? What areas need changing? What processes need adjusting? What areas need escalating up to management? And so those are some of the basic pots of questions that are pretty common. And then if it doesn't meet requirements, what areas are struggling? What is the root cause? What is the most logical solution? Where should this be documented? And so you start looking at, okay, things aren't going good. And so it's not looked at as who can I blame? It's looked at as how can we solve it? Who can I use to help me solve this? And so you're looking at that lessons learned through those eyes. So how do you conduct the retrospective? It's going to have some similarities here. And so notice you finish the sprint, you gather the data. And so what you're looking at here is, does the product meet the level of quality? Remember, in a retrospective, because you're doing it in Agile or Scrum, you have a product owner, you have a Scrum Master, you have a team, and you remember the team is much more empowered in an Agile setting than what they might be in a traditional setting sometimes. And so does the product meet the level of quality? That customer has been embedded through the product owner, at least for that team. And so they've been giving information all through there. And so that's been there. So also, what needs adjusting? Who can make the sprint more efficient? What needs documenting? So when we're looking at this, you're looking at innovation, being innovative documentation, you're looking at communication, you're looking at transparency. So we're being able to talk about all these, and we're being able to talk about any of these, and we're being able to share that knowledge. I'm not fearful in holding my knowledge. I want to share it. I want to pass that on. And so I'm not holding it back. This feeds us into data-driven decision making. Now, most of us think that we do this, but it is amazing how many times we make decisions with little or no data. And so when you're looking at all of these various things here, you're looking at, let me back this up just a second. You're looking at having an idea, and then you're looking at doing the research and pulling the data in to then be able to pass that information on and to pass along good facts and good principles, processes, tools, ideas, techniques, whatever it is. But what we're trying to do with data-driven decision-making is that you're doing it based on some type of evidence. It's not just on a wing and a prayer. You're doing it based on evidence. I see how this is working long-term, and it's working better for these. So gathering the data comes from many areas. How did the timeline respond in the project? What type of challenges came up in the iterations or in the daily work? For an example, many of you have talked about, I can't hardly do my current project because we've got crisis from the other projects. And so I get brought into the crisis. And so it sucks down my whole day. I get it. And a lot of times that's a part of that resources, lack of resources, then you're on multiple teams, as most of you are. And so what happens if there's a crisis in one place, you get pulled over to that place. And so now you do fix that current project that you've been brought in on, but what happens to your other projects? Everything's waiting because once again, a resource constraint. And so that might be something that has to be talked about. And okay, how many projects is realistic that we can have on in our plate? And that's going to depend on how complex the project is. But the point is that's a realistic discussion that everybody might have. And then in transferring the knowledge, you're looking at several things: all possible knowledge, delivered knowledge, knowledge acquired, knowledge applied. There's a lot of stuff I know to do that I don't do. Sound familiar to anybody else? If you don't believe me, I can bring Wanda in and she'll tell you all the stuff I'm not doing that she knows I know how to do and should be doing, okay? But what happens, we do it on the job too. There's stuff we know to do that we don't do. There's stuff we know that we could do that we just don't do. Okay, so preparing for the lessons learned preparing helps speed up the lessons learned and directs the focus to discuss the current topics. Documenting the ideas helps us have some type of tracking record for this, and especially when we're talking about these categories here of training, the processes, the communication, and the metric ambiguity. These are 4 areas that's going to really help you in this, and the reason is because continuous improvement for your personnel or for your team, that's what you're trying to track. How can I expand their abilities? How can I expand what they're doing now and help them get to that next level? And so that's part of that metric. And you're going to be creating action steps so that they understand how to take those baby steps and get there. In conducting the retrospective, you're asking for feedback from others on the team. You're creating an atmosphere that supports the suggestions, creating a list of documentation of guidelines. You're trying to be proactive in implementing all the ideas from the retrospectives. Don't delay the retrospectives. Be willing to do them at the end of sprints to learn from the sprint and even at the end of the project. And don't limit their responses to only a few categories. Do not create bias or prejudice in the answers. In other words, it's not just a blame game. So we're not just saying, well, things would be good if it wasn't for management. Management's not doing a very good job. That doesn't accomplish anything. What can we do to help management if it is management? What can we do? What steps, what recommendations can we make to whatever the group is? Because once again, blaming doesn't accomplish this. Also, the lessons learned and the retrospective for an iteration, it can be conducted on a phase. Many of you do lessons learned right now on phases of the project. You've got a 5-phase project. You do a lessons learned on each phase, and then you do a lessons learned at the end of the project. Nothing wrong with that. That's good. That's a good usage of learning from what we've done good and wrong all the way through that project. A retrospective does something very similar. They do it on an iteration, on a sprint. Every 3 weeks, they do a retrospective on that iteration they just finished so they can learn from it. So that's a positive thing. Some people will even do a lessons learned or a retrospective based on a WBS. This might be a little bit new to you, work breakdown structure. We know that work breakdown structure primarily does happen happens in a traditional project. So anyway, it gives the initial time estimate, budget of all the work items. Now, the problem is that if this is wrong or work has been left out of this, then we've got gaps in our plan, as you know. And so doing a retrospective or doing a lessons learned on this allows us to be able to see how good are we doing on our WBS, our work breakdown structure, or are we just kind of slinging something over the wall on a wing and a prayer, hoping for the best? We want it to be a little bit different. Also, gathering requirements is important. We could do it on gathering requirements. We can do a retrospective and lessons learned on the interview of the customer. So the point is that all of these can be broken down and build a specific lessons learned or retrospective to focus. The interview, the reason why I put this in is so many times we don't do a very good job interviewing. If you're a business analyst, God bless you. You are a wealth of information to help our projects. But if we don't have a business analyst doing the gathering of the requirements, we have to do it in our projects. And some people do better than others. I mean, let's call it the way it is. Some people do better at gathering requirements. And sometimes we know that we gather requirements, we set our projects up, and then all of a sudden you find out there's new requirements. We sometimes call them change orders, and sometimes that's not true. Sometimes we didn't interview that person, or we didn't catch that particular requirement. And so those are all gaps, part of communication, part of gathering requirements. But it'd be good for us if we're having that problem to do a retrospective and lessons learned to see how can we do better on this. Also, if we look at sprint planning, it's very possible that we're not doing a very good job on sprint planning based on what the product owner is doing as they re-rank the user stories or the features, and how the team estimates. Maybe the team doesn't have estimating skills. And so that might be something that comes up. So now we're going to train our team in estimating skills. My point is, this can be broken down into any area on the Agile side or on the traditional side to benefit us and help us really focus on something that we're going to get bang for that buck immediately in working with that. And then conducting a lessons learned, a retrospective on release planning. We know we're going to be releasing something to the customer. If we're doing an Agile or a Scrum, we're going to be releasing something to that customer every so often. And so every so many iterations, they're going to get a release. Even though they've gotten pieces of features or functionality as they've gone along, they're going to get a release. Even on the traditional side, you're doing this. So in Agile or Scrum, the customer receives a handoff from the Scrum team so that they can start giving feedback. The handoff is not considered a release. There might be multiple handoffs in Scrum before it's actually a release. And so the release will normally include multiple iterations. And so it's going to be a grouping of functionality or user stories that we have handed off. But being able to do a retrospective on that and on that release and see, okay, what did we do good? What did we not do good? How was our handoff? I mean, something like that. Maybe the project works great, but our handoff was horrible. Because we didn't talk, we didn't communicate, we didn't include everybody in that. And then also demos. As you know, on the Agile side, you're doing a demo, and that customer is going to be seeing the new features that you're producing for them. How did we do on our demo? The product might work great again, but we didn't do very good communicating that. So the point is, you're looking at breaking any of it down to do a lessons learned. What can we learn from it? A great tool for you to be able to use. And then on communication itself, how are we doing on communication? If you think about it, you think, well, I can communicate greatly. Well, but many times we don't. Communication is always listed when a project hurts and struggles. Communication is always one of the top, usually the top three. And it's almost always one of those top three that people will say, we don't communicate very well. And I get it. We don't sometimes. So communication, how can we communicate better? How can we communicate the right stuff? Maybe we were communicating a lot, but we're not communicating the right stuff. And then the other piece is going to be performance. How can we better our performance? How can we make the performance even better and stronger than anything else that we've done? And so when project performance struggles, should it be part of the lessons learned? Some will do it as part of it, especially if they do team evaluations. You'll see them do this. And then many times this is left for management because of the structure. But it allows you the capability to look and talk about these and to have an openness and a transparency. But once again, that culture has to shift. I can't feel like I'm being attacked, and you can't feel like we're just ripping on certain groups of people. It's got to be very positive and open for us to be able to do this. And then, but the big thing I think is this idea of next steps. We've got to be able to talk about it, document it, and where are we going from here? And that's a piece of information we don't do very well. we don't create next steps. Maybe we're having to make recommendations to management. Okay, that's fine. That's part of the next steps. But those next steps are going to be critical because that's an action item of what we're going to do to change. What are we going to do to educate our people and how to be able to estimate better? Okay, those are next steps. Okay, we got to get them in a class, or we got to get them one-on-one with our estimators so that they can work with them a little bit and get that skill beefed up a little bit. All of those are realistic things to talk about with this. Now, project retrospective, I thought that was really interesting here. This is a radar graphic or a spider evaluation. And so this was actually done through a survey, and I just wanted to show you this. And so it had several different pieces of the project retrospective, and they ranked it as different things. And of course, obviously, motivating the team, excellent value, keeping it simple, daily stand-ups, iterative delivery, communication, self-organizing teams, providing continuous value, welcoming change. And so it's an interesting little deal here. And so this tool allows the team to anonymously rate aspects of the project and the team. And so nobody knows who has said this, but you're getting this graphic periodically. And so they're doing, I think when looking at this, they were doing this monthly, I believe is what I saw. And so when you're looking at it, these would be different parts. And so like, for an example, they had all listing something like this. And so the range, and I think the range was a 1 to 5 range. 5 meant you were doing pretty good on. And so you're looking at working software, sustainable pace, all of those pieces were there, and you ranked a 1 to 5. Now let me back up just a second. Notice that 5, notice your 5 on self-organizing team and motivating the team. The 5 put that diagram way out there and showed that the team thought that they were really doing really good there. And so same thing with self-organizing teams. So anyway, this was a tool that they were using to anonymously work with their team to find out if what they perceived was happening that was good, is it really happening from the eyes of the team? Sometimes it's not. Sometimes our perception is, man, our people love us. They love me as a project manager. We're all, we all hold hands, sing kumbaya, and then, you realize, man, people hate you. They're praying for God to take you home early, and so there's that disconnect there, obviously. So anyway, just something for you to think about here in using these tools with motivation, of course, the self-organizing. And then obviously here's one, the daily stand-ups weren't doing very well, were they? And so that would tell you, realize, wow, okay, can we beef up that daily stand-up and keep it to 15 minutes and do something real positive? So anyway, those are just some of the things. Now we're down to our last few minutes here, so let me get you ready here for a couple of things. Next month, that is when we're going to do our webinar on navigating the artificial intelligence revolution, enhancing project landscape with AI. So we're going to do your 1 hour. Next month on February 9th, we're going to be doing this on artificial intelligence. And so if you've not looked into this, if you've not done any research into this, you probably are going to want to not be left behind and start exploring this. You can tap into OpenAI for free and get an account and start playing with it a little bit. But for those of you who are already members at Project Management Institute, PMI, they have a 5-hour free course if you're a member, and it's called Generative AI. And Generative AI is the AI that's getting all the hubbub right now because it's writing and mimicking what we would say as humans. And so that's one of the reasons why that particular one is out here all over the place. But you can go to PMI and search for Generative AI. It's a 5-hour course. It's excellent. I took it a few months back. And so it's something for you to be able to take. It'll lay some foundation for you on Generative AI. But I'm going to be speaking on it for 1 hour here. And then later this year, we'll have a public seminar that we'll be doing on 2 days on AI. And the way I'm trying to write it right now is a 2-day AI on artificial intelligence and project management, and then 1 day extra to go along with it on prompt engineering. Prompt engineering, AI is run by prompts. And so how to build prompts to get out of AI what you're wanting. And so we're looking at doing a total of 3 days. Many of you who are looking at doing your PMP, we have free mastermind groups. Have 3 this year. The mastermind group does 2 things for you. It allows you to kind of think how you're going to document your PMP experience and thinking through how and when you're wanting to do your project management professional certification. It also will drop your price for the boot camp down to the lowest price that there is. So by attending the mastermind group for free, you get the lowest price with the guarantee of coming to our boot camp. So we have 3 of those. So if you know someone who would benefit from this, it's 5 hours long. It's a week long for about an hour a day. They do different activities. They kind of look at their experience. We do 2 phone conversations, 2 Zoom calls with everybody so they can ask questions. It's really beneficial for people who are, they're still missing that gap between, I want to do my PMP, but I don't know what steps to take. And so we try to bridge that. And so anyway, they can sign up for that right now on any of those for free mastermind group. And then our PMP, we're doing virtual PMPs. And of course, a lot of people are trying to call in and ask for face-to-face. We're not doing face-to-face this year. We are doing virtuals. I do 6 of these. Our first-time passing rate is running about 97%. We had a little bit of a hiccup in December, and that's not that uncommon because December is kind of a bad month with holidays there. So we had more fail in December than what we normally do, but we're still running about 97% first-time passing rate, 99 out of 3. But we're going to do virtual boot camps all this next year. And so the only face-to-face we're doing is on site. And so we will do that for our customers, but they have to have 10 people on site for us to bring our boot camp there. And so so these are the dates for our virtuals. And so if you're interested in this or you know somebody, we'd love to have you. So anyway, let me thank you again for being part of the webinar series that we do. I hope it brings value to you. Obviously, this has been registered for you, and so Kim will send you the documentation for you to be able to pick up your hour for today. And so let me thank you again for being part of this, and let me thank you again for every month being part of this and listening and being so responsive with us and everything. So God bless you guys. Hope you have a warm week because it's freezing cold here in Missouri. So those of you around the country, so it's super cold here this week, and so I hope you have a warm week, okay? God bless you guys. I hope you enjoyed it today. Bye, everybody.